Thank you for watching News Diary and welcome back. And now, in this country, there is always issue to do with children in the courts and how to deal with that matter. To have that conversation on protection of children in the justice system is Dr. Florence Sumwen, who is the member NCAJ Standing Committee of the Administration of Access to Justice for Children, and Patricia Mundia, who is equally member NCAJ Committee, but the LSK representative, as they have this discussion in our sister station, Spice FM.
They have cabinet secretaries, they have their speakers, they have their they have their different programs. And when you listen to the memoranda that they present, usually there's usually those sessions where they present the memoranda and they talk about what they expect from government, what they want, what they have read from the act that they think can be implemented. Then you realize there's such knowledge amongst the children in terms of what they need and what they expect from the stakeholders. So yes, it gets to the homes. We were hoping that also it can come into the school curriculum as well, because I think it's about time we started having, well, I don't know what they'd be called, but some form of awareness and teaching around issues of justice and reform. At the home, I think then it goes back to parenting. We also say that parents need to be really involved in getting to know these laws and educating their children as well. But how far the government has gone into the homes of people is now a bit different.
But just to add, we do have a national helpline, which is 116. That line belongs to the government, the Directorate of Children's Services. It's free, supported by Safaricom, Airtel, and all other providers. So a child can actually call 116 and report, or just talk about issues affecting them, or even report that they are being abused at home. And on the other side of that call, the people who receive those calls are children officers and counselors. So once a child is able to call and report and they say where they are, then they will liaise with whoever needs to respond to the issue that the child is raising, including even removing a child from an abusive situation. So that is very helpful. I know that there are some organizations that have child rights clubs in schools, like the Kenya Alliance for the Advancement of Children's Rights. It does run child rights clubs in schools, which creates the awareness in children, because for you to protect yourself as a child, you need to also know what rights can be violated. So those clubs are very helpful in empowering children to know their rights. And then, of course, like Patricia is saying, the Kenya Children's Assembly is actually a formal arrangement where children bring to issues. They even go and talk to their MPs. They will talk to the governor. In every county there is a child governor. And MCS, child representatives. So they go and present their issues to the grown-ups, issues that are affecting children, and they hold them to account. So we have those forums where children
Progress is clearly being made, but I'm listening to what we're saying. It appears that issues relating to children, the adverse aspects of issues relating to children seem to be on the increase.
Yeah, that's true.
Because if you're talking about violation of children, from again what I hear, many of them seem to take place in the place where they should expect the most protection.
Yeah.
So by the time you are now talking about child-friendly police stations, there's already a problem with that, even with that statement. It is important to foresee and to forestall and to be prepared for an eventuality. But it then leads to the question that must be asked, what is happening to our society? Well, why are we seeing an increase in these problems? Is it that we are at a point where many parents cannot look after their children? They'd like to, but they can't.
Yeah.
what is the pressure? What is this thing that makes parents behave in this bizarre manner?
Yeah.
That actually injures their children? What is it about grown-ups who may be known to these children but are not their relatives? What, instead of being the protectors of these children, what makes them behave in the way they do to ensure that the children actually feel unsafe? By the time you're talking about a helpline, by the time you're talking about all these things, this problem is not small.
Yeah, you're right. There's the home, the family home is a place where many things happen, and the child obviously is dependent on parents and other grown-ups in that home to protect them. But that is not always the case, because that person, that parent or that adult in the home could be having their own stresses. And this could be work-related. It could be substance use. It could be marital tensions and problems that tend to spill over to children. It could be they also have their own psychological problems. And a child is always seeking connection and attunement with the parent. And sometimes when you find that parent is not in a position to give that back to the child, or when it's given back, it's given in a way that to the child is more of distressing than being healthy, it becomes a problem. And so you find situations where a child has done a small thing, but then the punishment is not concurrent with what the child has done, because the parent maybe has their own internal stress. So they're not able to regulate themselves enough to, maybe if they're just taking a slippers and just, beating the child, they remove a belt and then they whip the child for not completing homework, for example. So the child has, maybe a neighbor will call the police and say, this child is screaming all the time. So then the law enforcement has to come in and do something, to protect that child. So that's the situation we are in. So I think parents not only need, they say parenting does not come with a manual, but I can tell you as a psychologist that manuals are there. There are ways, there are approaches. Parents can seek help. It's a sign of wisdom, not a sign of weakness, to say that I need help to take care of my child, because I think the way I am doing it is harming my children more than it is helping
Where would
my
they
children.
Get this help?
They'll get it from psychologists, they'll get it from counselors, they'll get it from social workers. And sometimes when a parent is apprehended for abusing the child, like for example, and they're given probation, sometimes they are given probation. Probation officers will take them through parenting, kind of rehabilitation, so that they can be able to identify ways in which their parenting is dysfunctional and be able to be taught healthy parenting mechanisms. So that there is something that can be done. The help is there. They all need just to look for it.
To know how to get it.
Yes.
Affordably.
Yes, affordably.
Okay. Paul Jehe is asking a very good question on YouTube, saying, what's the committee doing in regards to the rights of basic needs such as shelter, education, food for children, especially in our urban areas? Do you advocate for measures to reduce their vulnerability? Because you realize that once it starts from that end, it will likely lead to other abuses. If the children, don't have access to the basics, education, shelter, they're not going to school because of whatever circumstances they're in, then that will lead them towards other areas that will expose them to abuse and so on and so forth. So does the committee talk about what can be done at that stage, preventive?
It does. Not just the committee, but even the law has a bit of provision for that. When I was talking about the forms that are supposed to be filled, they're actually in Schedule 1 of the Act. I have the Children Act here. So basically, if you look at this schedule, what it requires, and this is any child who is coming into the justice system for whatever reason, you're supposed to fill in the children officer or the probation officer or the gender officer, the child-friendly officer that City was talking about, is supposed to be filling in this information, the name of the child, where they go to school, do they have a physical disability, do they probably seem to have maybe some mental incapacity, where were they found, what are the living arrangements of this child, what can be done to assist the parents of this child, what Mweni was talking about basically. When you fill in this form, and if it is filled in properly, because maybe the gap that we have seen is that these forms probably are not being filled in. If it is filled in properly, it will compel different justice actors to do what is right, to prevent situations where now we are saying this child has no food. Because if a children officer is aware that this child is coming from a family that probably is having a hard time providing, then they know within themselves the mechanisms that should be there in place to help these children get the social assistance that they need, or this family assistance that they need.
You mentioned that sometimes these actors know the right thing but don't do it, or are unable to do it.
Let's say are unable to do it.
Yes. What prevents them?
From my experience, this is my personal opinion. This is not the opinion of the Society of Kenya. It is my lived experience. Probably ignorance of
they don't know what
the
they're
law
supposed to
or
do.
what they're supposed to do.
Or they don't know the importance.
Yes, despite being in those positions where they ought to know.
Okay.
I think that is one of the major things. Other things are maybe just general fear. Like if you're doing something, especially when it's child-related and you're alone, the chances of you not wanting to get too
personal,
yes,
and involved,
yes, become high. And that is why we always encourage the network, the referral mechanism, knowing that if I am working on a case as Patricia, I know that there's Florence and the body she represents, which can provide psychosocial support. I know that there's a prosecution that is there, and this is what they are mandated to do, and this is their scope. This is what I can ask for from maybe court, if I'm in court. From the children officer, I can ask for these reports to be presented and to be presented on time. So basically, if I'm working alone as Patricia, I can get frustrated.
Okay. But going back to the question by Jay here, you can see there's some areas where there's higher likelihood of children being exposed to certain vulnerabilities, right?
Yeah.
Because of just the social structure of where they are. Do we have more children officers who are going there to actually not wait for the child to come to the system, but to go to the community to identify, here we have children who are exposed to these dangers, children who are not going to school because their parents cannot afford, children who are then being forced to go and, expose themselves to other circumstances just so that they can eke out a living. Do we have officers who do that, who then would be asked, if a child enters the system, what had you done? Had you identified this? Had you flagged this as a child who is possibly going to get into an abusive situation? Because this child, by the time they're getting to the system, they've been abused. It's after the fact.
When out there in the community, sometimes chiefs hold barazas, and when they hold barazas, they call other government agencies to talk about the services that are available to members of the public. So you would find organizations, agencies like DCS, like probation, accompanying and going and say these are the services, going into schools and talking about crime prevention and all that. If you go like this morning, you go to a children office, you'll find outside a line of parents with children. Some are coming to ask for help with school fees. Some are coming to ask for food. You know, they are coming to ask for different things. And they are connected to services that are available, because of course one agency cannot have everything, address all the needs. There's the Ministry of Education, there's the cash transfer program that takes care of orphans and vulnerable children and supports those families. You know, there are other services out there. But when a child comes into the system, maybe it's a child in need of care and protection, or a child in conflict with the law, there's an assessment that is made of this child's psychosocial needs. So if shelter is a need, if schooling is a need, if accommodation is a need, you know, all those kinds of needs are made, and they are put into what we call a care plan or a treatment plan. So when that plan is made, it does talk about how each of those needs of the child will be addressed.
Florence, so, you're still talking about after the fact, right?
Yes.
Because your committee brings in all these actors,
yes.
right? The Department of Children Services is
yes.
there. And the Department of Children Services deals with a child from the moment a child is a child,
yes.
right? Not necessarily when they come into conflict with the law or
yes.
into contact with the justice system.
Yes.
So does this committee look at the number of cases that are maybe coming into the system that need to be looked at before they get into the system, and coming up with ideas and programs and encouraging these actors, things that they can do, whether it's government or non-governmental actors, things that they can do to make sure that we are reducing the incidences of children who are getting into the system? If it's about abuse, if it's about FGM, if it's about early marriage, all these things, communities that have early marriage, does the NCAJ say, okay, we have these communities that have early marriage, children here are vulnerable, we have these programs that are making sure that these children do not have to be rescued because there is work that has been done. Or we have areas where children are actually getting pregnant when they're in school. So we have programs that are making sure that these children are not getting into these situations as NCAJ's committee.
You see,
one of the ways I think I can say the committee has attempted to address that, and to also look at how we can try and prevent what you're talking about, is we sit down with the different civil society actors, different government agencies, different stakeholders, basically, and we find out, okay, who is where? Who is working on FGM, for example, in Samburu? Who is working on this in Meru, for example? And then we say, okay, these are justice issues in this area, and they come into contact with the courts, so we'll form court users committees. We have court users committees, which is also under the laws, and basically it is the same, what we are saying we have in the standing committee. We also have children court user committees, basically looking at the different actors within the different areas and the different courts that address now issues relating to children. Bring out the programs that are already existing, find out which cases have been reported, which cases are rampant, and then these court users committees submit reports. Yeah, they actually submit reports to NCAJ, and then these reports are the ones that now inform the interventions that are going to be there, over and above just also responding to the issues that are coming from the ground. So yes, the NCJ has court user committees. It also has another committee on sexual and gender-based violence that also looks into specifically the laws and the reforms around that.
Right.
So yeah, basically I would say yes, there's also that preventative mechanism.
So there's a framework in place.
Correct.
Okay, so the question then next time will be how well that framework is frameworking. Thank you very much, ladies, for joining us.
Yeah, we even have a justice strategy that we will be launching
Yes, but it's already J4C, Justice for Children strategy.
Oh, nice.
That is already also on the NCJ website. So we encourage everybody to see the strategies that is already in place. So if you visit the NCJ website and look for the strategy, you should be able to find it there. Yeah.
Sugar and spice and everything I spice it.
Spice up your life.
8 a.m. Good morning.